Let us not fear their fire, but learn to share its light." The Kailara murmured among themselves, their colors shifting to warm yellows and soft blues, expressions of cautious optimism. Slowly, Xerix raised the glowing ore high above his head, and a ripple of light spread through the crowd as they mirrored his gesture, their bioluminescence radiating brighter than ever. As the humans prepared to leave the council platform, Xerix addressed Alina once more. "Your kind, you are unlike any we have encountered. Your resilience, your ingenuity, it is both inspiring and unsettling. You endure what others would surrender to. You create where others would only destroy. How is it that your species came to possess such contradictions?" Elena smiled, her gaze distant as she thought of Earth. "Maybe it's because we've had to struggle for everything we've built. Our world isn't kind, but it taught us to adapt, and through that struggle we've learned that our greatest strength isn't just in surviving, it's in helping others survive too." Xerix nodded, his bioluminescence deepening to a respectful green. "Perhaps there is much we can learn from one another." The humans and Kailari signed an agreement that day, marking the beginning of a tentative but hopeful alliance. The Kailari shared their knowledge of energy manipulation and crystalline technology, while the humans offered their expertise in engineering and problem-solving. Together, they began to rebuild the city's defenses, stronger and more resilient than before. For Elena, it was a moment of quiet triumph. Humanity had faced yet another challenge, not with brute force, but with courage and cooperation. They had earned not just survival but respect, and perhaps even friendship, from a race that had once feared them. As the humans prepared to return to their base, Elena kept herself crouched and yearned. The stars are vast, and they hold many challenges yet to come. Elena met his gaze, her eyes fierce yet warm. "We'll face them, just like we faced this, together." Back aboard their ship, Elena and her team watched the Kailari city fade into the distance. The glow of its spires was now more than a symbol of survival. It was a beacon of hope. Malik leaned back in his chair, letting out a low whistle. "Well, Commander, we didn't just survive. We left our mark." Elena chuckled softly, her exhaustion giving way to pride. "It wasn't just us. They saw us for who we really are, and for what we can do." Sarah turned from her console, a rare smile on her face. "Do you think they'll really trust us now?" Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "Trust isn't built in a day, but we've taken the first step. And that's all we need." As the ship powered up for its next journey, Elena looked out into the stars, her heart steady with resolve. Humanity had proven once again that their fire, both literal and metaphorical, was a force to be reckoned with, and wherever the stars led them next, they would carry that fire forward, lighting the way for others to follow. The chamber was silent. The Kailari Council members exchanged looks, their colors shifting subtly. Xerix stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the glowing ore. He reached out with a clawed hand, hesitated, then picked it up. "This is different," Xerix admitted, his voice softer. "But it does not erase the chaos your kind has brought. You speak of coexistence, yet you wield weapons that incite terror." Elena's resolve hardened. "Then test us, not our fire, but our will to cooperate." Xerix tilted his head, considering her words. "Very well, there is a storm coming, a plasma surge that threatens to overwhelm our power grid. If you claim to master fire, then prove it by saving our city." The council chamber erupted in murmurs. Xerix raised a hand to silence them, and turned back to Elena. "If you succeed, we will consider your plea. If you fail, we will have no choice but to drive you from this world." Elena nodded, her voice steady despite the weight of the challenge. "We'll do it." Of the humans were escorted to the city's energy core, a labyrinthine structure of conduits and glowing nodes. The Kalari engineers explained the situation in terse clicks and hums, translated by Sarah. A massive plasma storm was on the horizon, and the city's shields were already failing. Without intervention, the core would overload, causing catastrophic destruction. Elena and her team assessed the situation. The Kalari technology was advanced, but fragile, lying on intricate crystalline lattices that couldn't withstand the heat of the plasma surge. "We need to stabilize the grid," Malik said, studying the schematics. "But their systems aren't built for redundancy. One failure could cascade through the whole network." "Then we reinforce it," Elena said. "We'll use their own materials to create fire-resistant barriers around the critical nodes." The team sprang into action. They worked side by side with the Kalari, adapting human ingenuity to alien technology. They used Kalari crystal dust to create a heat-resistant coating, applied it to the conduits, and rerouted power through backup nodes. The Kalari watched in awe as the humans worked tirelessly, their determination unwavering despite the mounting tension. As the plasma storm approached, the air grew charged and the city's lights flickered ominously. Exarix observed from a distance, his bioluminescence flickering between doubt and reluctant admiration. The storm hit with a deafening roar, plasma waves crashing against the city's shields. Sparks flew as the energy grid strained under the pressure. One by one, the critical nodes began to stabilize. Now was the time for Elena. "The core's failing," Sarah shouted over the chaos. Elena didn't hesitate. She grabbed a plasma stabilizer, its surface glowing dangerously hot, and sprinted toward the core. The heat was unbearable, but she pressed on, her mind focused on one goal. She reached the core and slammed the stabilizer into place, redirecting the surge away from the failing nodes. The system hummed to life, its glow steady and strong. The city's lights stabilized, and the storm began to dissipate. Elena collapsed to her knees, the heat finally overwhelming her. Carter and Malik rushed to her side, pulling her back to safety. "You did it," Carter said, his voice filled with awe. Elena managed a weak smile. "We did it." The Kalari Council reconvened, their bioluminescent bodies radiating shades of blue and green. Gratitude and respect. Xyrix stepped forward, holding the glowing ore Elena had forged earlier. "You have shown us something we did not expect," he said. "Not just your mastery of fire, but your willingness to sacrifice for others. Perhaps we have misjudged you." Elena stood, her strength returning. "We're not perfect, but we're willing to learn. Together we can build something greater than either of us could alone." Elena took it. "I may never be defied by the things I cannot bend, as you know well." "I'm at a throw." The gesture, simple yet profound, marked the beginning of a new alliance. As the humans left the council chamber, the Kalari city glowed brighter than ever, its spires illuminated by a light that symbolized hope and cooperation. Humanity had not just survived, they had earned their place among the stars. The city basked in an eerie post-storm stillness. The Kalari spires shimmered faintly in the twilight, their lights recovering as the humans and aliens gathered outside the energy core. The plasma storm was gone, leaving behind a clearer sky and a city saved from certain destruction. For the first time since the humans had landed, the air wasn't filled with tension, but with a shared sense of triumph. Elena stood on the council platform, her body aching but her spirit unyielding. The humans who had worked tirelessly by her side now watched as High Counselor Exit approached, his bioluminescence a steady blue-green. Behind him, other council members exchanged cautious glances, their glowing forms reflecting hues of awe and contemplation. "You have defied our expectations," Xyrix said, holding the glowing ore that Elena had forged earlier. His voice carried not just respect, but something deeper, an acknowledgement of kinship. Your fire has not consumed us as we feared. Instead, it has tempered both your resolve and our understanding." Elena straightened, her voice calm yet firm. "Fire is a force of nature, yes. But like us, it is capable of more than destruction. It can create, protect, and unite. What matters is how we choose to use it and how we choose to see one another." Zyric studied her for a moment before turning to the gathered Kailari. "They came to us as intruders. We feared them as allies, capable of building, not breaking." His voice rose, capable of building, not breaking. His voice rosing, capable of building, not breaking. His voice smiled and bulged with pride, capable of building, not breaking. His voice softened and lagging in pause. His hand rested on her shoulder. The jungle burned with an intensity that turned night into day. Flames danced along the horizon, consuming the towering alien vegetation in their path. Captain Elena Vega stood at the edge of the inferno, sweat streaking through the grime on her face. In one hand, she held the torch that had sparked it all, a crude but effective weapon against an enemy far more advanced than humanity had ever encountered. Behind her, the remaining members of her expedition team watched in stunned silence. None of them had expected this tactic to work, let alone to terrify the imposing alien creatures that had been hunting them. The creatures, 7-foot-tall beings with translucent skin and bioluminescent markings, had retreated as soon as the fire started, their predatory growls turning into high-pitched cries of distress. "Captain," one of the scientists stammered, his voice barely audible over the crackling flames. "I think they're afraid of fire." Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the shimmering figures now retreating into the dense foliage. "It's not just fear," she said, her voice sharp with realization. "They're terrified. It's like they've never seen it before." From the other side of the clearing, one of the aliens hesitated, its glowing eyes locked on Elena's torch. It emitted a low, guttural sound, a warning or a plea. She couldn't tell. Slowly it backed away, its movements jerky and uncoordinated. "This changes everything," whispered Dr. Malik, the team's xenobiologist. "They've outmatched us in every way, technology, strength, speed. But this is their weakness." Elena turned to her team, her expression resolute. "We've got our edge," she said, raising the torch higher. "If we're going to make it off this planet alive, we'll use it. Light every torch, set up fire lines, and keep the perimeter burning. If they want us, they'll have to face this first." As her team scrambled to follow her orders, Elena glanced back at the retreating aliens. For weeks, they had been hunted like prey, outmaneuvered at every turn. But now, for the first time, the tables had turned. The fire roared behind her, a living barrier of defiance. And Elena couldn't help but smirk. "They thought we were weak," she muttered, gripping the torch tightly. "Let's show them what humans are really made of." The planet Zephyros was a world of breathtaking beauty and unforgiving hostility. Towering trees with crystalline leaves glowed softly in the perpetual twilight, their luminous light refracting like a living kaleidoscope. Rivers of quicksilver snaked through valleys, flowing over rock formations that shimmered like polished gemstones. Yet this alien paradise was no sanctuary. It was a death trap. The human expedition team, led by Captain Elena Vega, had arrived 2 weeks ago on a diplomatic mission. Humanity, still new to interstellar exploration, had sought peaceful contact with the alien species known as the Kailari. This race was rumored to be technologically superior, their mastery of biochemistry and energy manipulation surpassing anything humanity could comprehend. The mission had been straightforward: establish relations, exchange knowledge, and prove humanity's worth as interstellar neighbors. But things had gone terribly wrong. It started with a simple misunderstanding. The Kayari, though physically imposing and undeniably intelligent, had an almost primal fear of certain elements, fire chief among them. A ceremonial torch lit during a diplomatic gathering had been interpreted as a hostile act, and the fragile peace collapsed. The Kayari responded with swift aggression, marking the humans as enemies. The team was forced to retreat into the untamed wilds of Zephyros, where they were hunted relentlessly. Captain Vega had never been one for despair. Her background as a reconnaissance officer during Earth's colony wars had hardened her resolve, but it was her ingenuity that had kept her alive. She knew how to think on her feet, how to turn desperation into opportunity. That skill had saved her team more than once since their arrival, but even her resourcefulness was being tested. "This is unsustainable," Dr. Malik said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. He crouched near the makeshift campfire, his gaze darting nervously into the shadows. The team had learned early on that the Kairali preferred to attack under the cover of night. "I know," Alina replied, her voice calm but firm. She crouched beside him, studying a crude map sketched into the dirt. "But if we keep moving aimlessly, we'll wear ourselves down before they catch us. We need a plan." Dr. Malik nodded reluctantly. "And fire? You're certain it's their weakness?" Elena glanced at the torch leaning against a nearby rock. "Did you see the way they reacted? They could have easily overrun us back there, but they didn't. They're afraid of it, Malik. It's our best shot." The rest of the team sat in a semicircle around the fire, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. There was Lieutenant Carter, her second in command, a stoic figure who had earned the crew's respect with his unflinching bravery. Beside him, Sarah Kim, their linguist, clutched a tablet loaded with data on the Kalari language, a project that had become increasingly irrelevant in their struggle for survival. "Captain," Sarah said, breaking the silence, "I've been analyzing their behavior. It's not just fear of fire, it's cultural. Their entire civilization seems to be built around avoiding it. Their technology, their architecture, even their rituals. It's all designed to keep fire out of their world." Eleanor's brow furrowed. "You're saying it's more than a physical fear?" Sarah nodded. "It's ingrained, like a phobia, but collective. They don't just avoid it, they see it as a fundamental threat." Carter leaned forward, his expression grim. "Then we've got an edge. If we can keep them at bay with fire, we can buy ourselves time to figure out an escape route." Elena stood, brushing the dirt from her hands. "Then that's what we'll do. Every member of this team has something to offer, and I'm going to need all of you if we're going to survive this. Carter, you and Malik gather materials for more torches. Sarah, I want you to keep analyzing their language and behavior. Anything you can uncover might give us another advantage." "What about you?" Kato asked. Elena smirked. "I'm going to scout ahead. We need to find higher ground and a defensible position before nightfall." The team moved into action, their fear momentarily pushed aside by purpose. As they worked, Elena retrieved her torch and ventured into the dense forest, her senses on high alert. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustle of alien foliage, the distant calls of unseen creatures, and the faint hum of Kailari patrols. Elena moved with practiced stealth, her mind racing. Fire had given them a temporary reprieve, but it wouldn't hold the Kailari back forever. They were adaptive, cunning, and relentless. If the humans were to survive, they would need more than fire. They would need a strategy that turned the Kailari's greatest fear into a lasting advantage. As she climbed a ridge overlooking the valley, the forest opened up to reveal a breathtaking view of the Kailari settlement in the distance. The city shimmered like liquid light, its structures floating above the ground in defiance of gravity. It was a reminder of the technological gulf between the two species, a reminder of how easily the Kailari could crush them, if not for their one fragile edge. Helena tightened her grip on the torch. They had come to Zephyros as explorers, as emissaries of peace. Now they were something else entirely. Survivors, outnumbered and outgunned. The Kalari thought they were superior in every way. They thought humans were weak, primitive, insignificant. Elena was determined to show them how wrong they were. Elena's first test of her theory came sooner than expected. As the team moved through the forest, carrying hastily crafted torches, the hum of Kalari drones signaled their pursuers were closing in. They had become adept at tracking the humans, their aerial scouts flitting between the crystalline trees like shadowy phantoms. Elena raised a fist, signaling the team to halt. "Stay low," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient hum of alien wildlife. The team crouched behind a cluster of jagged rocks, their torches extinguished to avoid detection. The drones passed overhead, their glowing sensors sweeping the terrain. For a moment, it seemed they might go unnoticed, but a sharp, inhuman cry pierced the air. A ground patrol had picked up their scent.
"Elena!"
Carter called, his voice tinged with urgency.
"Light them up!"
She barked, striking her torch against a makeshift flint. The flames roared to life, illuminating their small enclave in the forest. The Kalari patrol emerged from the shadows, their insectoid forms sleek and menacing. He hesitated, their bulbous, luminous eyes reflecting the firelight. Elena stepped forward, her torch held high. "You don't like this, do you?" she said, her voice carrying a sharp edge of defiance. The Kalari emitted a low, guttural sound, a mix of fear and anger. One of them, a towering figure with ornate armor, lunged forward but stopped, shouting in its direction. Elena advanced, her movements deliberate and commanding. The alien group faltered, retreating into the underbrush. Carter chuckled nervously. "Looks like they've got some kryptonite after all." "It's not kryptonite," Elena said, her gaze fixed on the retreating figures. "It's psychology. They've built their entire world around avoiding fire. We're playing into their deepest fear, and we need to exploit that fear if we want to survive." Their escape from the patrol was only the beginning. Over the next few days, the team perfected their use of fire as both a defensive and offensive tool. They constructed makeshift flamethrowers using scavenged parts from their damaged equipment, fashioned torches with resinous sap from the alien trees, and even created fire traps using the quicksilver rivers as accelerants. The Kalari adapted as well. They began deploying drones equipped with dampening fields to extinguish the flames. They approached from angles designed to minimize their exposure, and their tactics became increasingly aggressive. During one ambush, the team found themselves cornered in a narrow canyon. The Kalari surrounded them, their drones buzzing ominously overhead. Elena stood at the center, torch in hand, her mind racing for a solution. "They're learning," Kata muttered, his voice grim. "Let them," Elena replied, her tone resolute. "Sarah, any progress with their language?" Sarah, hunched over her tablet, shook her head. "Their communication is layered. Visual signals, pheromones, and vocalizations. It's like trying to decipher 3 languages at once." "We don't need to understand them," Elena said, her eyes narrowing. "We need to send a message." She handed her torch to Carter and grabbed a flare from her utility belt. With a quick twist, she ignited it, the red light blazing against the canyon walls. "Elena, what are you doing?" Malik asked, alarmed. "Making an impression," she said. Elena hurled the flare toward the Kalari ranks. It landed among them with a hiss, sending sparks flying. The Kalari recoiled, their disciplined formation breaking apart in chaos. Taking advantage of their disarray, the team charged forward, their torches held high like weapons of myth. The aliens scattered, their fear palpable. By the time they regrouped, the humans were gone, having slipped through a hidden crevice in the canyon wall. From the Kalari's side, confusion and unease were spreading like wildfire. High Counselor Xyrix observed the humans from the safety of his command post, his tendrils quivering with agitation. "These creatures are primitive," he hissed, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "Yet they wield their fire with purpose, as though it is an extension of their will. They defy logic, reason, and strategy." "High Counselor," one of his advisors interjected, "perhaps we have underestimated their resilience. Their adaptability is unlike anything we have encountered before." Cyrix's gaze darkened. "Adaptability or recklessness. Either way, they are a threat. Deploy the flame suppressors. Let us see how they fare without their precious fire." The flame suppressors arrived 3 days later, large, spider-like constructs that exuded a mist capable of extinguishing even the most resilient flames. The humans' torches sputtered and died as the mist enveloped their encampment. "Elena, we've got a problem," Carter said, watching the constructs approach. Helena gritted her teeth. "We'll adapt. We always do." With their flames extinguished, the team resorted to unconventional tactics. Using their knowledge of the terrain, they lured the constructs into quicksilver rivers where their heavy frames became bogged down. Elena crafted crude explosives using leftover supplies, creating fireless bombs that unleashed bursts of heat and light to disorient the Kilari. Despite their ingenuity, the humans were running out of time. Supplies were dwindling, and the constant pursuit was taking its toll. The team's unity began to fray under the strain, but Elena refused to give up. One night, as they rested in a concealed cave, Sarah approached Elena with a breakthrough. "I've deciphered part of their communication," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's rudimentary, but I think I can create a message." Elena raised an eyebrow. "A message? Something they'll understand. A demonstration, maybe. If we can show them that fire isn't just a weapon, it's a tool, we might be able to change the dynamic." Elena considered this, her mind weighing the risks and rewards. "Do it, but make it count." The next day, the team set up a controlled demonstration at the edge of the Kalari city. Using their remaining resources, they constructed a massive pyre, its flames reaching toward the sky. Sarah projected holographic images above the fire, scenes of humans using fire to cook, to forge tools, to provide warmth in the cold. The Kalari gathered at a distance, their fear palpable. Yet curiosity began to creep into their ranks. High Counselor Xyrix himself appeared, his imposing form silhouetted against the firelight. Elena stepped forward, unarmed, her posture non-threatening. She held out her hands, palms open, and gestured to the fire. "This is not destruction," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing. "This is creation. This is survival." The Kalari murmured among themselves, their alien language a symphony of clicks and hums. For the first time, they did not retreat. Instead, they watched, their fear tempered by a burgeoning understanding. Xyrix stepped closer, his eyes locked on Elena. He raised a clawed hand, and the Kalari forces lowered their weapons. For the first time since their arrival, the humans and Kalari stood together, not as enemies, but as beings seeking common ground. The tide was turning, and humanity's resilience had lit a spark that could not be extinguished. The Kalari city, a sprawling masterpiece of crystalline spires and glowing energy conduits, stood silent in the twilight. The humans had spent days preparing for this moment. Their demonstration of fire had sparked curiosity and a tentative ceasefire. But High Counselor Xyrix was still not convinced. A fragile peace loomed, and Elena knew that one misstep could plunge them back into conflict. Elena stood at the forefront of her team on the polished platform that served as the Kalari Council chamber. The alien leaders surrounded her in a semicircle, their forms shifting and shimmering as their bioluminescent exoskeletons reflected their emotional states. Greens for suspicion, blues for caution, and faint hints of orange for curiosity. "This is your final chance," Xyrix said, his voice resonating like the strike of a gong. "Convince us that your kind is not a threat. Otherwise, we will end this before it begins." The holograms painted a vivid picture of humanity's relationship with fire as a force of creation rather than destruction. But Exile's luminous eyes remained fixed on her, his expression unreadable. "And yet your fire has brought devastation to our kind. What assurance do we have that it will not consume us?" Elena stepped forward, her voice steady, strong, and impactful. "Fire, like any force of nature, is dangerous if wielded without care, but it is also a tool that can foster life, cooperation, and growth. We are not here to destroy, we are here to coexist. Let me show you." She turned and signaled Carter and Malik. They carried forward a simple contraption they had built using Kalari materials. A hybrid forge powered by a controlled flame. Elena knelt beside the forge, feeding it with a pinch of crystal dust. The forge sparked to life, its gentle warmth radiating outward. Elena picked up a piece of Kalari ore, dull and lifeless, and placed it into the forge. The flame danced across its surface, and within moments, the ore began to glow, its inner brilliance revealed. She pulled it out with tongs and placed it on a slab for cooling. "This is what we can do together," Elena said, gesturing to the transformed ore. "Your resources, combined with our knowledge, can create something new, something neither of us could achieve alone. The only choice is evolution." Epsin walked to the building and opened the door.